A pleasant good evening to everyone. This is going to be an exemplar video to help people think of topics and be more able to imagine what the project involves. It is the Mentor Speaker Project, a language and communication final project, which will help us emulate and analyze the work of excellent communicators of the past and of the present. You need to, for this project, choose an English speech which has changed history or touched very many hearts. It can be an English speech that has been translated, and if the speech occurred before it was able to be recorded and it is reenacted, that is okay. And here we have President Kennedy with his famous "Ask not what you can do for your country, but ask," well, it was the other way around. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And we have Greta Thunberg, who wowed the United Nations with her passionate climate change speech. She ashamed all the adults. We also have Malala pictured here. So look for a great speech. You need to share either text or video excerpts of the speech. In my example, I will share both. Give the historical context in which the speech was given, and especially, of course, meta-communication again, analyze the rhetorical techniques that the speaker used. And here we have Kamala Harris and Rigoberta Menchu's speech to the United Nations, in which she gave the famous quote, "We are not Mayan ruins in the forest. We are not a zoo. We are a living people and deserve to be treated with respect." One of my favorite Rigoberta Menchu quotes. Finally, after you've found an excellent speech and analyzed it, show us how it can be used in the classroom to help children develop communication and language arts skills. Okay, because all of these speakers have skills that we can communicate to children on various levels. So we'll look at teaching tips here. For my mentor speaker, I choose Martin Luther King. I'm sorry if you wanted his "I Have a Dream" speech, because it is taken. I love this speech, and I'd fight for it, you know, even if I were in the class and the teacher had decided to take it, I would be really upset because I love it. But there are a lot of good speeches out there left for you. It's a very famous speech. The historical context: King's speech pushed for the Civil Rights Act, which did pass in 1964, right after he gave the speech. And the main effect of that act was to ban the Jim Crow laws, which were in force in the southern United States, separating black people from white people in public places. The Dream speech did not occur in a vacuum, but was given after many years of peaceful protests, marches, refusing to sit in the back of the bus, etc. And these were all modeled on the tactics of both Mahatma Gandhi and Jesus Christ, the nonviolent protest tactic, very effective, especially in the media age. Sadly, it took the Birmingham Children's Crusade to really bring the issue to international attention. This was a televised protest whereby children stood up for equality and equal access to public schools, and were hit by large fire hoses and German shepherds and attacked by the police and jailed. And these were children down to 8 years old. So it's a struggle that has continued in the U.S. up to now. It's certainly not over. Rodney King, Floyd George, Breonna Taylor, the list is almost endless, it seems. It's a struggle which is not over yet. King did not stop it, right? Stop all the racism, and many people are calling for very radical systemic changes. King's speech, however, did help the Civil Rights Act become a reality, so it's important. It was a first step toward legal systemic justice, Lots of people would like for it to be the last step, but it doesn't. It isn't. Obviously, should not be the last step. The speech itself is well worth looking at as a mentor speech. It is both iconic, historic, and even today, so many years later, it's moving. I hope when I share my video clip of parts of the speech with you, you feel it, because I really feel it when I watch it every time. It's a moving speech. It was intended for both black and white people, and it was symbolically given in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., because it was Lincoln, of course, who kind of gave the promise for all men being treated equally in the United States. It has become one of the most famous speeches in all of Western history. It's an appeal to the conscience of a nation, and it is inarguably clothed, basically, in the language of the Bible. As a Christian nation, it is very difficult for anyone in the United States to ignore the biblical language that King employed, and as we'll see, he did that clearly on purpose. He qualifies as a mentor speaker. A mentor speaker is someone who has something to teach us in the field of communication, for his excellent use of ethos, pathos, and logos, which I'm sure you have heard are the 3 strands identified in ancient Greece of a good speech. Logos, the logical piece of the speech, is the very beginning. He sets the stage for what he has to say later, very cool and calm and just giving the facts. He adds ethos. It's his credibility, as in, I'm not just making this up. This is what it says in your nation's most revered documents, as in, this is what it says in your own Declaration of Independence. This is what it says in our national anthem, people, right? So that's his credibility there. Then he builds with strong emotion and poetic language and devices, and that is the pathos piece, the most famous part of the speech. All of those devices, alliteration and repetition and parallelism that you'll be identifying in speeches, are pathos devices because they hook our emotions and get us involved, right? But I just want to point out that a lot of speakers in history have given us plenty of pathos, and some of them have had credibility also. But without logos, a speech is pretty worthless, right? So you want a speech that shows logos. Nowadays, we are seeing less and less logic in the speeches of public figures, right? And it's good to go back and remember logos should be the dominant device. And King does begin his part 1 is all logos, and it's the long part that we will not reproduce for you here because it's at least 15 minutes listening to him build up his logical case slowly, and I don't have time for that in this video. It's not a famous part of the speech, but it's really important. He's laying down the whole foundation. He's not making any kind of crap up out of his head. He really, really knows that these documents show that the legal basis of the Jim Crow laws is not there, right? So he lays that down first. He uses an extended analogy. There's a lot of biblical language to appeal to his church-going and white listeners, and he makes appeal to 2 accepted authorities within the United States, right? So the analogy is that of a check. He says the Negro people, that's the word they used to use, were written a check by the U.S. government all the way back when you said, we believe that all men are created equal, right? And we haven't got this check, and this check, we would like to cash this check, but it seems to be bouncing. So he extended this. It's an extended analogy in the beginning. And the biblical language is fantastic in the speech. It's as if you were reading the book of Revelations. It's so beautiful. And his appeal to authority, he goes a lot with the national anthem all through the speech. Even in the pathos piece, he goes with the national anthem several times. And he definitely goes with the Gettysburg Address and the Declaration of Independence, which he quotes. One day, this nation will rise up and it will live out the true meaning of its creed, right? That's very ethos. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. The second part of the speech, which is the famous part, there are many recordings of this one. I chose a recording with music behind it because I kind of like that one. There are many recordings of just his voice and other recordings of rap versions of it, children singing it. There are just so many recordings of it, but I tried to choose a good one. His second piece, somebody in the crowd shouted, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And then he stopped looking at his notes and he just started to shout at the crowd. But it's obviously been really planned and rehearsed because he doesn't miss a beat. And he presents a really strong, tight keys. And he really plays with the audience's emotion. There is parallelism because he says, "Let freedom ring, not only from," and then he names all the mountains in the north. And then he goes ahead and names all the mountains in the south, and one at a time, with a lot of imagery describing them. So you really feel like freedom will ring from every molehill in Mississippi, right? Not only from Stone Mountain in Georgia. So there's a lot of, those are parallel. The repetition, of course, of "I have a dream," and other phrases repeated. The piecing, it builds and builds to a crescendo. And the language itself is just full of assonance and alliteration. It's just a poet's dream, his speech. So I'll go ahead and play a little clip that I enjoyed of it with original music and let you feel the speech, part 2.
Brotherhood, I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, "My country tears of thee." Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Wow, and doesn't that speech just give you the chills and the thrills and the, as the Belizeans would say, the cold seed feeling, all of that passion. Very excellent example of Pathos Part 2, Martin Luther King. Here are some ways that we might be able to use this as a mentor text in the classroom. Obviously, you can challenge students to find, count, underline devices. This is kind of the most basic use of the speech. It is absolutely chock full of metaphors and similes, personification. We got a few poetic devices, sound devices too. Beautiful example of alliteration. Excellent. It's excellent for in a poetry kind of way. And another one is to challenge students to portray sections using choral speaking. This is actually beautiful because of the beauty of the speech. I actually did this in grad school in a language methods class, where the lecturer told the students to get in groups and portray sections of the speech chorally. We had 15 minutes to practice, and then we presented, and it was beautiful. It's a lovely use of the speech. This doesn't resonate as much with the Belizean crowd as it does, of course, because it's a U.S. speech. The thing that I have seen with children in Belize that is really, really great with this speech is that it's kind of a template for having a vision of a better world. And this is beautiful with children. This works age 10 and up, I'd say. Discuss things which go on in Belize which are wrong, which are not fair, which may be oppressive to somebody. Challenge students to write about their own dreams for their own country using any of the following. The repeated refrain. Almost every child wants to say, I have a dream, repeatedly. Although some of them, the more creative ones, will come up with their own refrain. Most of them, after hearing the speech, will want to see it in Martin Luther King's accent. Make a reference to the Belizean national anthem. This is a really great device, and it brings out some great speeches. You can also ask children to use an extended metaphor. The bounce check that King used was a great example of an extended metaphor. Throw in Bible language, throw in alliteration. Just depends on your level, but any of the devices that King used, you ask children to write a speech about some injustice using some of King's devices. And I've actually gotten some of the best speeches that I've ever heard from children with this particular exercise. They become passionate and they become skillful. This is actually a fabulous mentor speech for people of any nation. Anywhere where there is injustice, it's good to have a dream about fixing the problem. So it's up to you to find a speech that has really inspired people in some way in history, a speech that has haunted people, that has stayed in the memory of people, that has instructed people in some way, that has made the winner of the war feel so guilty, that has, all of these different things, that has memorialized the life of someone or brought us great sadness or taught us something. So there's a lot out there, and you might also look at some that with the famous use of devices. Barack Obama was an unknown senator when he gave a speech at the Democratic National Convention. This speech where he said, this is not the black United States, this is not the white United States, This is the United States. This is not the Republican United States. This is not the Democrat. And he kind of went on like that, but that is a great use of antithesis and repetition. It's also totally permissible to use speeches that took place long ago and were never recorded. Mark Antony's speech at Julius Caesar's funeral is really, really famous. It's fabulous examples of things like synecdoches, countrymen, friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears, right? The irony, there's rich irony. It's beautiful. Christ's Sermon on the Mount is a fabulous example of a mentor's speech. Students who have presented Christ's Sermon on the Mount in the past, however, have sometimes kind of turned their presentation into a Bible lesson, and that's not going to get you the points that you need, because right here we are actually looking at the techniques, the public speaking techniques. If you actually read, especially in Matthew, if you read Christ's Sermon on the Mount, you're going to notice the parallelism, the repetition, the imagery. You're going to see what he did to bring the teachings across, right? So just be careful if you choose Christ. Don't get bogged down too much in the actual teachings and go more with how he taught, right? Because we are actually kind of looking at how these mentor speakers taught us. Plato's defense of Socrates is very famous. Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman was not originally given in English, but there are many excellent reproductions of it. So there are many ancient speeches that have really moved people and would be really interesting to analyze and to use in the classroom. Don't forget speeches by women and people of other ethnicities. I originally called this assignment Great Speakers of History, and when I Googled that, I saw that I only got these white men, and actually when I called the assignment that students would Google that looking for their speakers, and they would only present on white men. If you choose to present on Winston Churchill, for example, he was a really excellent public speaker, and there's nothing wrong with him, right? Or J.F. Kennedy, or any of the fabulous speakers who happen to have been white men, but let's not limit ourselves to these, okay? A lot of people would like to choose a Belizean public speaker, and I'm all for it, but you want the person to have enough recorded speeches that really were very important and moved people to make it usable. And in our history, we are a little short of those, the recorded speeches. I'm sure whatever Antonio Soberanus said to the crowd, it was very moving, right? Before they went and tossed in that snake to the police station. But the whole speech is not really there for us, accessible for us, especially not in audio or video form, right? So we'll look for a diversity of great speakers, right? And I'm going to leave you with a very powerful speech. It's Chief Seattle's reply, given in response to the U.S. government to buy his people's land. Seattle knew his people would become extinct, and they have. Only the name Seattle is the capital of the state of Washington. But his speech was so powerful, and the pathos was so excellent that he really managed to haunt history, right? A great speech can have a huge impact on history and make the speaker basically immortal. As teachers, we do well to study and emulate the techniques that these great speakers used and use them as tools to instruct our students. Public speaking is always a weakness with children, and it's good to look at some examples. So I'm going to leave you with some of Seattle's words. Enjoy them, or be very, very afraid. And when the last red man shall have perished from the earth, and his memory among white men shall have become a myth, these shores shall swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children shall think of themselves alone in the field, the shop, the store, upon the highway, or in the silence of the woods, they will not be alone. In all the earth there is no place dedicated to solitude. At night, when the streets of your villages and cities shall be silent, when you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning hosts that once filled and still fill of this beautiful land. The white man will never be alone. Let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not altogether powerless.